It's Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026. Up and down and back and forth and round we go with Iran. Also, the latest on Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson. And one congressman's plan for entertainment for America's 250th birthday. Next on the AM Update. Yesterday, an absolutely wild day of developments on the Iran front in the Middle East. Woke up to news that U.S. had started to make defensive strikes yet again against the IRGC forces in the Strait of Hormuz. Also, Israel was under fire yet again from Hezbollah on a different front of the same war in northern Israel and in Lebanon as well. We had a number of reports about whether or not this Iran deal is actually getting closer to being done. We had a report that Iran broke off all communications. There are reports circulating that Iran's, I believe, President Masoud Pezeshkian had asked to get out of his job because he doesn't have any authority anymore to make deals with people like the United States. I think this post from this account I've seen a lot from Nio Berg actually sums up pretty well where we're at with Iran. Here's what happened today. Nio says, Israel and Hezbollah have their own war geographically separated from the Iran war. Hezbollah started this one. The IRGC superglues its own ceasefire to Lebanon, despite Lebanon being a sovereign country 1,000 miles away. That was the latest Iranian demand. Any ceasefire has to include Hezbollah and Lebanon. IRGC loudly declares, we refuse to negotiate unless our proxy terrorist group is left alone in Beirut. Within hours, this is also true, Trump was on the phone talking to Netanyahu, probably forcing him to back down from strikes against Hezbollah and Lebanon. At some point, Nio says, this stops looking like 3D chess and starts looking like the U.S. allowing IRGC to pressure and threaten them. And that's kind of how it looks from the outset. President Trump's apparently feeling that pressure as well, saying in a Truth Social post, quote, Iran really wants to make a deal and it will be a good one for the USA and those that are with us, but don't the Democrats, various seemingly unpatriotic Republicans, understand that it is much tougher for me to properly do my job and negotiate when political hacks keep negatively chirping at levels never seen before, over and over again, that I should move faster or move slower or go to war or not to war or whatever. Just sit back and relax. It will all work out well in the end. It always does. So there's President Trump saying, get off of my you-know-what. I'm trying to work here. Yeah, I don't care. This thing is just... Tried to give a lot of patience for what was described as a 3 or 4 week operation. We're now into 3 or 4 month territory. Trying to give a lot of leeway for that, but it's getting kind of weird. Let's go to this. A 3-judge panel for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit has ruled the Trump administration's ban on active duty so-called trans-identified troops in the U.S. military is unconstitutional. Of course, this ruling came out on the first day of so-called Pride Month. Totally just a coincidence, I'm sure. The court issued a split 2-1 ruling. The ruling, written by Obama-appointed Judge Robert Wilkins, stated that the ban appears to be driven by the bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group, persons who identify as transgender. The majority of judges Judith Rogers and Robert Wilkins agreed the policy was likely unconstitutional. The court, however, said that the Trump Department of War cannot eject current so-called transgender troops out of the military. They can bar them from enlisting in the first place, however. That was all over the news yesterday midday as well. Let's go to this. Tyler Robinson appeared virtually for Judge Tony Graf's decision on defense motions to sanction prosecutors and conduct parts of his upcoming preliminary hearing in secret. The judge denied the motion to block the public from parts of the upcoming proceeding and ordered a new hearing to arguments on the other motion. Robinson's defense also filed a Utah Supreme Court appeal over the weekend, aiming to have the judge's earlier decision to not ban cameras undone. 22-year-old, of course, is accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk last September. Judge Tony Graf denied Tyler Robinson's efforts to have portions of his upcoming preliminary hearing held behind closed doors to keep some evidence exhibits hidden from public view. That is the main takeaway from the latest legal proceedings in the case of Tyler Robinson. It sounds like the entire world will have access to some pretty bombshell evidence against Tyler Robinson. Both sides will have 90 minutes to speak at a hearing on June 12th. So that is right around the corner. Let's go to Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis, once again, raising a big muck, wanting to do away with property taxes. Listen to this.
Homeowners need relief. And so it's my view that if you are a Florida resident and you have a homestead, we want that to be tax-free. And so that's our vision. That represents about 30% of the overall property tax revenue because they still tax investment property, commercial property. And so this ballot measure will do an opening salvo of raising it, the exemption to $250, adjusted for inflation, so they can't play games. That will be 60% of Florida homesteaders tax-free. Then as they raise it, the legislature will be able to raise that and have a process to do that. Once you get to 500,000 limit, that's 92% of homeowners, and then on it goes from there. But if we don't give homeowners relief, Maria, by 2032, they're going to be taking in $83 billion. So that would mean $32 billion in 2019. 13 years later, it goes to $83 billion. That is not sustainable. And so this is really a historic opportunity to have more money in people's pockets and to actually have their home be their private property that the government just can't use as a piggy bank.
So there is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Once again, this is not the first time he's tried to raise the issue of eliminating or at least doing away, mitigating property taxes in the Sunshine State. And I do appreciate it about Governor DeSantis. I think he understands the truth because whenever we talk about, hey, we got to do away with property taxes. And by the way, I mean, the property taxes that I pay now. I mean, I've lived in this house for going on, I think it's been 4 years now, 3 or 4 years now. And the rate that we pay, our monthly mortgage payment, has gone up by 25% just in that time frame. And it's all driven by property taxes. And so I understand people want to do away with property taxes. That's all well and good. Less taxation, almost always a good thing. The typical retort that I hear, though, how are you going to pay for roads? How are you going to pay for schools? How are you going to pay for all of these services that the government provides? And, of course, a retort to that is, well, we need to get the government out of education. But when it comes to things like roads, upkeep, maintenance, where I do believe it's at the very worst a gray area for government involvement, I do think that government builds roads to promote commerce. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for everyone. When it comes into these gray areas, the retort is, how are you going to, if you don't tax, if you don't have a property tax, if you don't have a higher income tax, how are you going to fund all of these services that we rely on? And I think that is an appropriate retort. However, that doesn't really apply in a place like Florida. I think Governor DeSantis recognizes that taxing tourist areas, taxing the tourism industry, making the tourists coming into the state pay for property taxes, basically, having them foot the bill. That's pretty brilliant because Florida is a tourist hotbed, and it will be for quite some time. So good on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, again, beating that drum. It's an idea that can work, I think, in that state. Probably not in most places, however. Let's go to this. DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin on the ongoing protest riots being broken up at Delaney Hall, the ICE detention facility in New Jersey, saying some of these protesters aren't from the area.
Individuals that came in from Portland, not from New Jersey, came from Portland to lead. We've seen that they've been well supplied. We've seen Antifa flags being flown. And once the state police came out, and which, by the way, awesome group of guys. They understand crowd control very well. And they started pushing the individuals back after they warned them, started making arrests. You saw that the situation quickly got under control. And for us, when we first started calling, they were simply saying they didn't have the resources. And it's interesting to me that they finally found the resources and started clearing their streets.
Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security Markwayne Mullin revealing that some of the protesters arrested in that New Jersey riot in front of the ICE detention facility, they were from Portland. For those of you who are not good at geography in high school or in college, Portland, Oregon is nowhere near New Jersey. Unless he meant Portland, Maine, maybe, but I don't think Portland, Maine is necessarily a hotbed of Antifa. When we come back, if you have lost the view, you've probably lost. Also, a story I have yet to cover that we're going to get to from the United Kingdom, and one congressman's idea for entertainment for America's 250th birthday bash. That is coming up next. When you've lost the view, you've probably lost if you're a Democrat.
Controversies keep coming for Democratic Senate candidate Graham Platner. On the heels of apologizing for a tattoo associated with Nazis, an offensive post about a wounded U.S. soldier, now his wife, Amy Gertner, is responding to reports that she gave his campaign a heads up about her husband sending sexually
So The View covered the Graham Platner thing.
Like we did with Swalwell. But it is disturbing and it is horrible. And why can't we do
The entire cast just ripped Platner for minutes on end.
To be honest,
and Platner is a Democrat. If you have lost the view, you have probably lost if you are a Democrat. Now, I do not believe any of those women's genuineness when it comes to these criticisms. But for whatever reason, whether it's maybe an awakening of somehow, or maybe they feel cowed into doing this, they feel pressure not to be complete and utter hypocrites, which I think is a healthy thing. Instead of just towing the line for this Graham Platner guy from Maine, they're deciding, you know what, actually, we have been spending the last decade calling basically all of our political opponents pedophile Nazis, and now we have a degenerate Nazi, maybe given that activity on that certain app that he's alleged to have an active account on. Maybe he's gotten even dirtier down a dark hole. Instead of towing the line for that guy, we're actually going to call him out. So this is not necessarily a great thing, but good for The View for not being complete flaming hypocrites. Let's go to the United Kingdom. English police are facing mounting scrutiny after officers handcuffed an 18-year-old university student as he bled to death following a fatal stabbing. That's allegedly after believing the attacker's false claim that he had been the victim of a racist assault. This write-up from Fox News. The case has sparked outrage across Britain, fueled political debate over policing, and prompted calls for the release of body-worn camera footage from the responding officer. Alan Mendoza, executive director and co-founder of the London-based Henry Jackson Society think tank, told Fox that the case reflects broad failures in British policing culture. Vikram Digwa, 23-year-old, was convicted Thursday in the Southampton Crown Court of murdering Henry Nowak, an 18-year-old finance student at the University of Southampton, during a confrontation on December 3rd of 2025. Officers arriving at the chaotic scene initially treated Nowak as the suspect after Digwa allegedly claimed he had been racially abused and attacked. Officers handcuffed Nowak before realizing the severity of his injuries. He later collapsed and died at the scene despite attempts to administer first aid. So this is the comedy, this just awful story out of the UK, a combination of two hot-button issues: racialism, where everything is race and race is everything, and complete and total unfettered immigration. You have the culmination of these two things. Also just a totally abject evil from the, I think, Indian descent man who attacked this 18-year-old. So there was some sort of altercation, some sort of confrontation. This Vikram Digwa guy tells police that he was racially profiled, racially abused, and attacked by this Henry Nowak, when it was actually the Indian dude who had stabbed Henry Nowak. Police arrive on scene, treat Henry Nowak, the victim of the stab wound, as the attacker, put him in handcuffs as he's bleeding out from a stab wound, I believe, to the chest. And that was probably enough. Who knows whether or not they would have been able to do much to save him from that place. But they automatically assumed, because he was white, that he must be racist. He must have been the one that was attacking, not knowing that he was actually the one who was bleeding out from a stab wound. Just horrifying stuff. Just pray for that country, and that something like this doesn't I mean, similar stories, as I'm aware, have happened here as well, and it's just awful to think about. Well, one congressman, that would be Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, in the aftermath of all of these various has-been artists pulling out of the America's 250th birthday concert celebration national state fair thing. All of these has-beens have pulled out of their musical acts they were supposed to perform. Congressman Tim Burchett has some ideas for who could actually fill in. Thought this was interesting.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Mr. President. Tim Burchett. I, like you, am a little ticked off and disappointed that some of these, I guess, so-called musicians have decided that they have some problem with celebrating our 250th anniversary of the founding of this great country. To think that patriotism is going to offend somebody. And we all know that these New York or Los Angeles or Hollywood PR firms wrote these statements. It's pathetic. Anyway, what we ought to do is, my suggestion would be get your friend and my friend John Rich, great musician, to lead it off. He's got some great patriotic tunes he's written and he sings, and I mean, it's just awesome. And let him MC the dadgum thing and have all these folks come in. There's plenty of acts in Nashville, people that are trying to get on a big stage like this. This is the world stage, be the largest stage in the world. Everybody in the country will be watching this dadgum thing. And let some of those musicians get out and sing a few songs. All we'd have to do is pay for their dadgum airfare, most of them, just to get them up there, and they'd love it. And then, of course, have Kid Rock. Nobody's more patriotic in the rock and roll world than he is, and he's awesome. And then I know you got his number. Heck, I've been with him when he's called you. And then the finale would be cool to have Lee Greenwood come out and sing. He's got a bunch of great songs, but of course, the ending would be God Bless the USA, and have all the other acts come out and sing along with him, and maybe they could do a single verse. Kid Rock or John Rich or something could do one of the verses, and I think that would be awesome.
Congressman Tim Burchett has a plan for President Trump for musical entertainment for the birthday celebration, America's 250th celebration. I was with him all the way up to the Lee Greenwood. It's nothing about Lee Greenwood personally. It's just, you can tell the last few times that he has performed, it's always God Bless the USA. And it's a great song, but I think we need to let him enjoy retirement if he's actually retired. I think we're good. I think we're good on Lee Greenwood. I like the idea of Kid Rock and John Rich. Both of these guys, successful in their own rights, very accomplished. But the idea to have them kind of lead off one night, lead off another night, I have to think that both of these guys know scores of up-and-coming, very talented artists who probably don't hate the country. Probably don't hate might even love the United States of America. I have to think that John Rich, Kid Rock, probably have dozens of really talented people who could command a stage, just nobody knows about them. So I like that idea. Let's give up on the Hollywood. Let's give up on the mainstream music industry. We're going to build our own culture now. Love that idea. Good job, Congressman Tim Burchett. That's going to do it for Tuesday. If you got a primary in your state, get out and vote. I do. I'm living in Iowa here. Get out and vote in those primaries. Got some important ones around the country. We'll recap for you tomorrow. For the rest of you, have a great day. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.